Hey everyone, Adam here, So Is Your Podcast. I have another interview for you today. I got to sit down and talk to filmmaker Joel Soisson about his new movie, My Best Worst Adventure. My Best Worst Adventure is available now on VOD. You should check it out. It's a really imaginative and fun, and it does deal with a bit of heavy subject matter, but it's a kid adventure movie, but not just for children. It was really cool to see this other world. It follows a girl who I thought the mother had died. Maybe they just split up now that I think back to it. But it's a girl left with a father, and the father doesn't dislike her, but he's kind of just at a loss as what to do with her. So he sends her to Thailand to spend some time with that side of the family. Her mother was Thai. So she has no connection to Thailand. She's, a child in America. She's got an iPad. She's got, internet, Wi-Fi, all the modern amenities that we all enjoy every day, as I'm recording this on a laptop and you're watching it on either a computer or phone. So she goes, and it's very much a fish out of water story. She doesn't want to be there. She refuses to speak to anybody. She's just miserable. And there's some really cool cultural things that I don't want to spoil here because they're in the movie and they are based on real cultural things in Thailand. The movie was made with a lot of non-actors to get a more authentic feel of the people in this area of the world. It was a really cool thing. It was eye-opening in a cultural kind of way. Hey everyone, Adam here, So Is Your Podcast. I'm sitting down with Joel Soisson. Is that how you say it?
It's Soisson, but I'll answer anything. That's okay. Fine.
And that's one thing I always forget to ask before I press record.
No worries.
How you doing, Joel?
I am doing great. I'm learning technology by the minute and loving life.
Awesome. Well, you have a very cool career, very interesting leading up to your newest movie. So before we get to your new movie, My Best Worst Adventure, I always like to ask creative people to go back to the beginning and what was that spark and when did you know you wanted to get into entertainment?
I kind of drifted into entertainment. I was always a sort of a graphics guy. I went to art school to be a painter and sort of fell into animation, got a little Disney apprenticeship in LA to be a character animator, and then didn't feel that was going to be my happiest career. I was sitting in a dark room, hunched over a light table. Back in the day, they did that, drawing by hand.
Not a backlit screen.
No, yes. From there, just decided motion pictures was a better way to, if you were into moving pictures, that was a lot easier. And I did the route that a lot of people do. They just go into the business going, I will do any job that you put in front of me and I'll try to do it well. And, you kind of fail upwards. I got a couple writing gigs and got fired off a couple shows as a wannabe camera assistant and realized that wasn't going to happen, and produced a bit. And then, mostly was just there saying yes to anything that had to be done.
That's pretty cool. And I think that's a good lesson for people looking to get into the entertainment business.
No, doesn't work very well.
You're not just going to get in and direct a feature your first day.
Right. No, if I was going to sum it all up, it would be 50 years of yes and 6 months of no. That's the arc of my career.
All right. So you mentioned you did some producing, but it seems like you've done a lot of producing.
Yeah, well, numerically speaking, of course. Yes.
Yeah. So how did you fall into that side of things?
Producing is the oddest duck of all jobs, because if you're a cameraman, you need to know cameras. If you're a director, you need to know how a film gets together. A writer, you need to know story, obviously, and makeup, hair. All of these are skills that have very targeted and specific abilities and talents. And a producer is just a guy who recognizes it in others for the most part. And that is your skill, is you look at other people's talents and see how they blend together and how they can help facilitate this alchemy of teamwork called a motion picture. And that's what producers do best. And I don't know if I'm among the ones who do it best. I try very hard, but when you're not doing it at your best, you become the other kind of producer, which is really just a receptacle of hurt, that people just come to you with problems all day long. The honey wagon didn't show up. The cast is unhappy with their rooms. We're over schedule. We're over budget. The money's not here. Blah blah blah. And I often wonder who would ever in their right mind want to be that person. I mean,
As you were
especially
doing it.
yes. I mean, it's like being a parent to 70 people, infants often, who check their resourcefulness and their ability to cope at the door, figuring somebody else is going to do it for them.
And you did.
Yes.
Okay, well that's a cool trajectory, and it was really you piqued my interest at animation. So you went to a kind of a graphic design school, or was it more like strict animation for film?
No, it was actually a fine art graphic design. It was Pratt Institute in New York, and it was a pretty good school for that. Not so great for animation, and certainly very limited with at the time. It could be different now with the film arts. Thought of going to NYU just because it was closer, but then the lure of Hollywood.
Sure. So getting a character animation job at Disney, I can't imagine that was easy.
Well, that grew out of my art background, and I had a certain facility for drawing, particularly character animation, and so that got me at least in the door. But like any job, you start off in animation being what's called the in-betweener, right? The guy who, somebody else draws goofy at the beginning of his move and at the end of his move, picking up the ball, and you have to do the 24 shots in between where his moves. I mean, his hand moves a fraction of a micron every frame, and that's, to call it tedious, I think would be an understatement. That is just pure hell in my mind. Hats off to the people who do it and do it well.
For sure. It's always cool watching anytime. They don't really do a lot of the traditional 2D animation anymore.
No.
But even going back, it's amazing to watch, and the quality is there and you can feel the quality, but to think about the logistics of it is a nightmare.
Yeah. And that's why I will always have respect for people who do 2D animation, like The Lion King versus Frozen. They're both great movies, but as soon as you get into CGI, it's just, I guess it's a different magic box that I'm not familiar with, so I don't give it the same kind of respect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm sure it's not easy, but not the same kind of difficult.
Exactly.
So you haven't kept up on the animation world?
I have. I've tried a couple little sequences in some of my films. I've animated a couple little bridges and graphic things, and used some of the latest animation software, which is a breeze. If that was around when I was getting into the business, I might be an animator today, because there's so many more tools that shortcut the process. But back then it was just sweatshop work.
Right. That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
You got like 10, 12-hour days of drawing the same character in the same position.
And then you go home with your hand frozen in that position, and then you got to try to unlock it at night. Hats off to those guys.
Yeah, seriously. It seems like you mentioned the accessibility. It seems like a lot of the software that a studio would be using is stuff that like a regular guy could buy online, or a regular person could buy on the internet.
Well, that's been the epiphany of the new millennium for me as a filmmaker, is because I do a lot of independent films and not a lot of ones that are blessed with huge studio budgets. So we've had to look to shave corners anywhere we can. And when you now look out and you realize that a kid in junior high school on his laptop can be churning out dinosaurs equal to Jurassic Park's first round, it's just mind-boggling, the access that you have to good people who can be competitive with ILM and the best. It's amazing.
Yeah, that's one thing that seems to be a common thread when I talk to people like you who are in independent film, is that the barriers of entry are so much lower than they've ever been.
The playing field is so much more level now, which I appreciate, even though the competitive advantage I had over the 20,000 people making a feature film now every year is really gone, because, money used to be the great segregator. You had to come up with at least $500,000 to $1 million plus to even begin to think about making a movie with film. And with effects, you had to think about like $5 or $10 million. And now, iPhone movies with aliens from space attacking cities and leveling them. I mean, okay, it's all about the idea now. It's like everybody's film is like a typewriter. You can make your vision, and now you're competing not with mechanics. You're competing with ideas, which I kind of like. It's just it's like the competition of a writer. Everybody's got access to the same words. You just got to have better words.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it, because with the barrier of entry being lower, the pond is now an ocean of competition.
It is now an ocean, yes.
Yeah. That's cool. And you've been in the industry long enough that you've been able to see it change for better or worse. So that's...
Yeah. And when people ask me that, I always say, yes, better and worse. It's how you game it, how you take advantage of what you can do. Mm-hmm. I would say it's a little harder now, because so many micro budget and low budget movies are getting made that, you can't just walk onto a film set and expect to be making, enough money to pay your rent. You just really got to often work 2-3 jobs just to survive and, learn your craft. And yet, it's always been that way in one way or another. It's an industry that does a very good job of weeding out the non-committed.
That's also a very good way to put it.
Yeah.
Just the amount of rejection and hurdles and everything to go over to get even the shortest short movie made.
We are so happy to tell you how worthless you are. I don't think a lot of other industries have that latitude. Actually, truthfully, I never do that, but I'm
speaking for the industry.
I'm speaking on behalf of the broader industry. Exactly.
Right. All right. So you've been doing a lot of producing and stuff, and you have a fair amount of horror on that resume. Is that something that you're typically drawn to?
No, that's part of my reflex mechanism of saying yes to anything. And early on in my career, because low budget is the domain of horror, or vice versa. So particularly in that arena, it's easier to get a movie made typically for a super low budget, which is the way most people get in on the ground floor. And so if you do a couple that are good and make money, then of course people are going to go, oh, that guy's a horror filmmaker. Let's tap him to do that. That's how I ended up doing Nightmare on Elm Street 2, and then going on and doing, Halloweens and Prophecies and Hellraisers and Children's of the Corn. And I don't know, it goes on. It becomes a little numbing at a certain point. But no, I like stories about people and real challenges in life and the humor and the tragedy that comes from it. That's why I wound up on the film that I currently did. It was just to get away from the artifice of making genre films.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what you just said, I don't think we could come up with a better segue to get to my best worst adventure.
Oh, it was all planned on my part.
Because the press release that I got asking, hey, do you want to talk to Joel? It had a lot of the horror titles that you just listed there. And I try not to watch the trailers before I watch the movie, just so I can go in totally fresh. And it started, and I'm like, oh, this isn't at all what I thought it was going to be. It's a totally different genre altogether. Okay, let's do this.
Yeah.
And nothing against the horror genre. It was just a surprise.
Well, once something's been ingrained into your psyche for so many years, that I couldn't avoid a few horror elements in the movie that crept into the story. But largely, I think to call it a coming of age movie is sort of a little trite for what I was trying to do. At least it's to me the thing that engaged me the most, and I got clued into this when I was actually doing a horror thriller in Bangkok, when I talked to the producer, and she told me about being a child and racing water buffaloes. And, it's like the running of the bulls in Pamplona. Instead of having them, behind you, you're on top of them bareback and trying to hang on for dear life. And these things are as fast as horses on the sprint. And you fall off and you're trampled. I mean, it's just like, goodbye. And
children.
Yeah, and they're kids. And so I was both fascinated and kind of like horrified at this thing. And it's become a national sport. The adults then take over at a certain point, and they're the ones that get the big prize money and the fame and the rock star status. But this whole sport of taking what is essentially kind of more of a Seabiscuity National Velvet, kind of one of those great horse sports stories, and transposing it to this completely insane gonzo world of buffalo racing just intrigued me. And then putting this American girl into the center of that, like she's just landed on an alien world. And how do I get the hell out of here? That just that just intrigued me to no end. So that was the genesis of it, and what came of it, I'm just fiercely proud of, because you always wanted to make a movie that you want to not only show your friends and family, but that you would actually watch again after you made it.
Oh yeah, there you go. So was the story based on this producer's life, or did you just kind of take the broad elements?
Very loosely, because of course she grew up in Thailand and is intrinsically Thai. But what I wanted to do was sort of bring the foreign perspective of like what it would be like to be dropped in the middle of this without having any idea what it is and how it all came about. And so she's this creature of a broken family and a broken soul herself, and she gets essentially exiled to Bangkok because her father doesn't know what to do with her, and sends her to this distant Thai grandmother in the backwoods of Thailand, and it's sink or swim for her. And as you might expect, big spoiler, she learns to swim a little bit.
Yeah, I like the way that you told the fish out of water story, but there almost seemed like an expectation that she shouldn't feel out of place because she looks like the rest of them.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was an interesting angle.
Yeah, and they sort of expect her to be a certain way because the character in the movie is pretty much half Thai, and the girl we cast for the movie was half Thai as well. In fact, she was somebody who just had never acted a day in her life, not even on a school play or anything. She just walked in, skipped school one day and saw like auditions for something and walked in and said, I'll try this out. And she stood in front of a camera, and the character is mute in the movie. So not only did she have to sell herself as an actress without speaking words, she had to be just able to convey a presence, which I thought she did sort of magically. And that was one of my favorite discoveries on the movie, of somebody who I think is going to be a star, because she just conveys everything that's going on in her head and in her heart without ever speaking a word.
Yeah, I found at times while watching it, thinking of it as a silent movie, even though it's not, just because you're following a character who doesn't speak, and then a lot of the speaking is subtitled.
Yes, and I wanted the movie, because it's shot in a foreign land, and a lot of the people I didn't want to get Thai actors trying to speak English, and then losing the gift of the words that they had. So I kept as much in Thai as possible, and really felt like the movie didn't need their dialogue. It almost became kind of like the Charlie Brown parents dialogue, where they're just going blah, 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 while the kids are just going about doing what they do. And, there are a few plot points that you have to pay attention to, but if you just turned off the subtitles and watched the movie, you would get 98% of the film. And that was the purpose.
For sure. Yeah, that's a really good point, because there was also times reading the subtitles that it's almost like you didn't need to. You know what the scene's conveying. And
well, I've always loved silent films. In fact, the first film, again, a tell of age, I guess, but the first film I wrote was one of the last films that Lillian Gish, the great silent film star, ever did. And I've always been a big fan. And in fact, I did a film called Prophecy 4 that was one of my first directing gigs, that when they released it on DVD, they forgot to put the subtitles on, even though it was shot in Romanian, and almost all of the Romanian parts, half the movie was in Romanian. And I was absolutely furious and ready to, like, who do I sue? Who do I kill? And who do I just maim? And somebody took me aside, cooled me off, and said, watch the movie. You don't need those subtitles. You know exactly what's going on. And it was actually better. It was like, whoa, how much we rely on subtitles now.
Yeah.
And the spoken word, for that matter, in a film which is really a visual medium and always has been.
Yeah, like narration or something, even if the character doesn't necessarily understand, it's just unnecessary.
Yeah. So I'm started off as a guy who wrote a lot of words in his screenplays, and now I don't like words. Not a big fan. Just keep them to the novels. They need them.
Yeah, there you go. How about the other people in the cast? Were they actors or?
The boy was a professional actor who had been acting since he was able to crawl, I think. And it was a very interesting dynamic to see how, because they're the focus of the film, the boy and the girl. And the boy is a gifted and practiced professional, and the girl wasn't, and see how they played off each other. It was really interesting. They helped each other because she helped him get out of, the routines that actors sometimes fall into, and he helped give her a little structure. So yeah, it was, and then at the end, spoiler, they have to kiss. And neither of them ever had. And that tension of watching those two faces come together was remarkable, because I was off camera, literally, like, almost pushing them together, because they were so nervous, and they would just a quarter of an inch closer. Okay, brush your nose, now just touch your lip together. And it was like, ew, ah. And success, I did it. That was my greatest directorial triumph.
It is interesting to take a practiced actor. I mean, he was young, but if he's been acting since he can crawl, he still had some years of experience.
Yeah.
And a young girl who had never acted before. Because I would have thought, whoever found a couple Thai actors or a whole cast of Thai actors that I just don't know because I'm not in Thailand, so.
Right. Yeah, well, it was fun working with people, back in the States. We have our group of both known and unknown actors that sort of become our little traveling ensemble. And here it was like, I don't know anybody. Mm-hmm. And even I barely knew the language. I mean, a few words. For the older actors, if I needed a sort of a subdued or stern or kind of tough guy look, I would just kind of give them a face and say, John Wayne, oh, John Wayne. Okay, I can do that. It's just like you find these ways of communicating.
Did you have a Thai crew as well?
Yes, all Thai.
So you just had like a translator with you?
Exactly. And it was really like being like helicoptered into a totally foreign situation, much as the girl is in her universe. I was kind of struggling and groping around in mind. But, you know, once you find your legs, you realize, and I've done other films in other countries with other languages, so it wasn't the first time, but it's a revelation every time that if you just put aside your preconceptions about how things should get done, you'll find that these guys are as good as our crews and sometimes better, given the fact that they're doing the same thing with so much less.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And you also really captured the country, you know, like the views and the foreign aspects of it. And there was, I don't think it's too far of a spoiler to divulge, but there's a scene at a temple where you have like the typical American tourist family in there who's really just like, when you're watching something like that, even being an American who's been a tourist, you're just disgusted.
Yes, I wanted to make them just a reprehensible, repulsive couple that just represents all the worst of America.
Yeah.
And I made my wife be the wife of that couple.
Oh,
so,
that's funny.
So she appreciated that.
Yeah, it was just great to see the country, because even like a massive Hollywood movie that sells itself on being this world traveling movie, and it's all just extreme close-ups of the actors' faces. It's like, you're in this country. Where's the wide shots? Like, we all have 60-inch, you know, LCD screens now. Let's do this.
Well, that was important to me. I mean, we used, that was about the only thing we had of any value or technological value, at least. We had very good cameras, and we shot widescreen just to capture the beauty of that very unspoiled country, and a way of life too, because, you know, they look at these buffalo as their family. I mean, they're a source of food, and I mean, they don't eat them. Far from it. They you know, they use them for agriculture. They use them for transportation. They use them as family pets. They're just ingrained into their family fabric, to the point where they're inseparable. And yet, with the advent of all of this technology that's now coming to Thailand, like tractors and agricultural equipment and all these shortcuts, and you just can't survive economically pushing a plow attached to a water buffalo. They're having to give up that culture. And so now you're seeing water buffalo on grocery stores, supermarket shelves, ground water buffalo, because they had to give them up. And tragically, it's like, for us, taking a favorite horse or a pet and just giving it away, and they're not going to a happy place.
Yeah, that is too bad.
And it's kind of heartbreaking, but that's progress, you know?
I guess so, yeah. Because I did really like the relationship, because it was the girl and the boy, but then there was also the kids and the water buffalo. And like you said, it was just like they're palling around with a dog.
Yeah, it is that. Probably in another 25 years is going to be just a historical myth that nobody, which is another reason why I really wanted to make this movie now and get a piece of history that probably won't be around much longer.
Yeah, capture that moment in time.
Yeah.
It's too bad they aren't keeping them around for the historical aspect, but it might just be too expensive to keep a 2,000-pound animal as a pet.
It totally is. I mean, and they take care. I mean, they take good care of them, but they require care. I mean, they need to be cool all the time. So they basically live, when they're not working, in neck deep mud. It's fascinating. They walk into like quicksand and then just go up to their neck, and you expect them to disappear, but they just, I guess they know how far to wade into it, and they're just like happy as, pigs in a trough, I guess. But so yeah, it's just, but yeah, it's like anything. They require food, they require care, and these are very impoverished people.
Yeah,
especially outside the cities.
Yeah, it was an interesting contrast of worlds when the girl first goes over.
Yeah, that was, obviously this isn't the first fish out of water movie, but different fish in different water, I think.
Yeah.
in this case.
It's always interesting to see different cultures, so I think it was good that you captured that.
Yeah.
And has it been doing festivals or anything like that?
We had a really good run of festivals and got some very nice reviews, fortunately. Because just a quick aside, this is maybe more of a rant than an aside, but when you're producing sequels of horror films, people don't even look at the film before they're after you for like just committing blasphemy on the franchise. And it is, and you get numb to it, but I have gotten so many reviews inviting me to all sorts of horrific fates. And wait, I just made a movie. I'm sorry you don't like the direction we took it. My bad. But to see all the opposite on this film, where people just seem to really love it, and the reactions in the festivals and the reviews have been just 100% supportive. And it just does, it validates the effort, because it's not easy doing these kind of, well, it's not easy making any kind of film, as anybody who's tried knows.
Right.
So to avoid getting kicked in the chin for it afterwards is always a nice little extra plus.
Yeah, and I think it was really nice that you kept things pretty light, even though there's some serious subject matter involved. Just given everything that's happened in the last year and a half, I think if you made this like dour movie with a little bit of triumph at the end, it might not have been so well received. But even with the bad stuff going on, you always saw that light at the end of the tunnel.
And that was very important. I'm glad you brought that up, because that particularly in movies today, I think you need a little more hope than normal. And there are bad people doing bad things in this movie. And what I really try to show is that they're doing bad things, but they're not necessarily bad people. And like the father, there's an abusive father in the movie who comes around at the end and supports his son doing the very thing that he beat him for. And I just wanted to see that, even those kind of people can be redeemed, that the bad guys don't just go out as bad guys.
Yeah, that was a very nice aspect of it, especially dealing with children, because it's like, oof.
Yeah. I mean, forgiveness is important. You don't excuse the actions of parents and friends and schoolmates, but you can at least understand where they're coming from, frustrations and feeling trapped and, pinned to a wall and lashing out and all the things that happen in any culture.
And you hope that people can grow.
Right. And that's, hopefully the message gets lost in the good time of watching these kids go on an adventure and get lost and, do incredible things and have some fun with it. But yeah, there's hopefully a little depth there without getting preachy and too leaden.
For sure. Yeah. It never came across as heavy-handed. So.
Oh, good. Thanks.
Yeah. Well, why don't you tell everybody where they can see and when they can see My Best Worst Adventure? We
are coming out in a couple of weeks, September 1st on pay-per-view. I think they call that VOD now.
Yep.
And then shortly thereafter, it will be streaming on many of the streaming services. So just for the short term, just write down My Best Worst Adventure and do that little QWERTY thing on your TV. And after September, it should pop up somewhere.
There you go. And do you have a website or any socials or anything you want to point people to?
We have a Twitter page called, Claudia, what's our Twitter page called? Oh, my Twitter page creator is gone, but I think it's My Best Worst Adventure, hashtag My Best Worst. I'm so bad with this stuff.
Just search for it.
And we're on IMDb and we're on Facebook as My Best Worst Adventure. So I think if you use those keywords, you'll find it someplace. And I'm expanding my Twitter experience daily now. I started off with a guy that didn't use any of those things. I had I just got it myself a cell phone only about 5 years ago, so I'm catching up.
Okay.
I'm not the technological marvel that I aspire to be, but next time we have a conversation, I'm going to barrage you with social media.
You'll probably know more than me by then, because I don't know much of it now. Well, Joel, thanks for taking the time to come on. That was awesome. Really enjoyed the movie. I urge people to check it out September 1st.
Appreciate it, Adam.
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to thank Joel one more time for coming on the show to talk to us about My Best Worst Adventure, which is available now on VOD. Check it out. It's a different movie. It's a lot of fun. It's inspirational. I think you'll enjoy it. So, please make sure you like and subscribe to the channel. Helps us grow our audience. Helps us know what you're after. Helps you not miss out on more cool stuff we have coming, because we have more interviews, more movie reviews, putting up comic reviews on the website all the time. Not going to want to miss out. Like and subscribe. Also, make sure you listen to So Wizard Podcast every single week, wherever you get your podcasts. SoWizardPodcast.com is your resource for reviews, recommendations, merchandise, videos, and more. So Wizard Podcast can also be found on Patreon, or for as little as $1 a month, you get multiple monthly bonus shows. This month, the So Wizard Podcast crew is reviewing the Witcher anime series. We are also doing a video interview of Evangelion 111, or 1.11, which is a movie kind of that retells, reboots, reimagines part of the series. We're going to be going through all those one a month. We also love hearing feedback, so drop us a note in the comments, leave us something on social media. All accounts can be found after the show and in the show notes. And on a more personal note, a good friend and I have an ongoing comedy comic series out. It's called Social Studies, slice of life comedy comic written like a sitcom, done in the style of the 90s cartoons that we grew up on and inspired us. We have an Indiegogo going on right now where you can jump on board the whole first chapter, 7 full issues in a paperback book, $25, $5 shipping, almost 200 pages, full color content. It's a great time to jump on board before chapter 2 kicks off. Thanks.